Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us again on our Wednesday virtual connects from AIA Colorado. My name is Mike Waldinger, CEO of AIA Colorado. Today, we've got a very special panel. It is our directors from the various sections of the state. We have 4 different regions where we take our representatives from. We have the South section, the North section, Denver section, and the West section. We have each of those directors here with us today. If you'd like to receive learning units for today's session, you will if you've registered in advance. If you have not registered in advance and you're coming at us after the fact, simply place your member number in the chat function and Megan will record that for you. If you have questions during today's webinar, and we do of course want to get to your questions and participation, you can use the Q&A feature in Zoom, which is on the bottom of your screen, to put that question in, and we will be sure to get to those as we proceed along the way. So without further ado, I'll ask the panelists to say hello, their name, their firm, and the section they are from. We'll start, as you see, at least on my screen, hopefully it's your screen too, across the top with Rob Pyatt.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Rob. Rob's the North Section Director. He practices in Boulder with Pyatt Studio Architects. First year on the board. Welcome. Did I leave anything out?
Nope. Thank you, Mike.
Okay.
My name is Ignacio Correa-Ortiz. I am the, at least I'm following the order in my screen.
Yeah.
All right. Ignacio Correa-Ortiz, I'm the Denver director, and I've been in the board for a couple of years. And I am a senior architect and urban designer with the Regional Transportation District in the Denver metro region.
Great. Hi, I'm Sarah Broughton. I am the West Director and founding principal of Rowland+Broughton Architecture and Urban Design. And we have studios in both Aspen and Denver.
Hi, I'm Sheva Willoughby. I am the South Director and I am an architect and project manager for the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo. And I've been on the board for 2 years, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. Welcome, everybody. We're glad to have you. And just to warm things up, because I know we're all curious, how has your life changed personally over these last 3 weeks? Take it away, whoever would like to start with that one.
Sorry, and I feel a little guilty and really grateful. My life, besides starting a brand new job 3 weeks ago, on that Monday when everything kind of hit the fan was my first day at this job. Otherwise, my life actually really hasn't changed that much. So I feel really lucky. I'm still coming to work every day because my job and the zoo is considered an essential thing. And all the people here are essential employees. So kind of business as usual for me, which is good for me, but I feel bad that I can't relate as good to everybody else's situation. So I'm sure you're all in a very different situation than I am.
Great time to start a new job, though.
Yeah.
I'll jump in. I would say the biggest life change for myself personally, beyond the Groundhog Day, and every day is just kind of the same. So try to mix it up as best as possible, take long walks, is just really being in 6th gear 7 days a week. And just the mind is churning, and just how do we survive this? How do we get out stronger? How do we keep people employed? How do we lean in with our city officials to really help with economic recovery and development? So my life has changed, where I really feel my leadership role is in a very heightened position.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rob, how about you?
Well, I mean, very suddenly all of our work was placed on hold. And so I think like everyone, we've been kind of scrambling to set up work from home technology and kind of change the way that we've been operating as a firm, and then kind of check in with all of our consultants and clients and listen to each of their situations and kind of plan for it. And I think we've also scrambled to develop all the financial statements and reports that we need to apply for some assistance, which we were, you know, basically thanks to the AIA and the resources available to all of the members. I think we were very proactive in applying for the payroll protection program, which we were successful in receiving. And so I think that was 2 weeks of kind of really concentrated work to try to get that resolved. And now we're kind of coming up for air and trying to see what we can do next. So
for us has been a big learning lesson. RTD had for practice not to let people work from home because we wanted the face-to-face interaction and so on. So going from there to being 40 hours a week at home was a challenge in technology and in the way we organize, but we adapted really quickly. I organized a team we have Microsoft Teams, which is a similar platform to this one. And we meet every morning at 9 a.m. for 1 hour. And we have kind of an agenda. I can go through it. We're busier than, I guess not busier. We're more effective now than we were in the past because of this kind of interaction. There's less chatting at the cafeteria and that kind of stuff. But it was a hard and quick adaptation from working in the office to working at home. I had been traveling a little bit before the Monday that Sheva was referring to. I had been in Austin, Texas on the 1st of March and in New York City on the 9th of March. And both, so when I came back, I didn't know exactly if I had actually acquired the virus or not. About a week ago, I developed a fever and I was basically put on a quarantine by my doctor, who basically saw me in the same way that we are talking with our members today. The assumption was, you have the virus, we cannot know because you're not famous, you're not a politician, and you're not very sick, so we're not going to test you. So that was the assumption. I never had a fever other than that. But the adaptation, now my wife, who is a massage therapist, is out of work. She actually called it very early on. And so the space I am in right now is a beautiful studio. So I am grateful for that. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the cooking has been improving and doing all kinds of projects that now I guess the one thing that I miss is going to work, going through the city to work and so on. And we can talk about that a little bit later. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, it's not, usually when they say cold turkey, they talk about when you quit something, not when you start something. So we've got a whole profession and workforce that has started a new way of working cold turkey. The great thing about today's panel, not only with the way the board is structured, is we get people from around the state to help set the direction for the organization. But for this particular group, we have a variety of not just geographic diversity, but practice type diversities too. So we hope that'll help inform the conversation and give a variety of perspectives. And I do want to start there on that geographic point of view, because you're all in different parts of the state. How are you seeing people in your particular area responding to the COVID pandemic? Let's continue, Ignacio, and talk about Denver.
Yes, it is interesting. Denver has done the right thing, both in terms of the politicians are giving the right kinds of messages to the community. I also am surprised to see the large number of people who are considered essential for the economy and so on. So I had to do a couple trips to pick up computers and so on, and you know, on a on a Friday at 4 p.m. on I-70, the traffic was about 75% of what it would have been normally at that time. So I was surprised to see that many people. I have talked to a whole bunch of other people who are essential, and they are still working. RTD itself did not cut their service for many reasons, including how the contract is laid out with the operators and so on. But now we're going to a free, now we are in a free fare system in which for essential employees, you can board from the back of the bus, or if you're taking a bus or the train, without having to pay fare. That is part of the CARES Act implemented already in the system. So it's a mixed bag, because very early on during the request to stay at home, I went out for a run at the park, and it was like if it was any Sunday afternoon. It was crowded. So I stopped doing that. I'm running now in the basement. Thank you.
And Sheva, what are you seeing down south?
Definitely a lot less traffic. It seems like people are really following the governor's recommendations of staying home. It's been kind of fun to see on the social media side of it, of everyone is really pushing to support local. And so it's just kind of fine balance of like, stay home, except if you're going to go support something local, then go out and pick up your food or whatever. And my commute is much longer now that I don't work downtown, and there's not really very many people out at all. I still see about the same amount of people out at the stores. And as far as like construction, I still have my hand in some projects from my old firm. Everything is kind of business as usual. We still have contractors coming to the zoo doing work. We've taken, we have a little more intense like safety meetings, and we're being really strict about maintaining that social distance. And everyone here at the zoo is wearing masks if you're around anybody, and the contractors are needing to do that too. I have heard from some firms that people are kind of deeming themselves essential, and they're still going to work because no one else is going to work. So they're deciding it's, and I don't know where I fall on what I think about that, but so they're like, well, I'm involved in construction, so I'm essential, so I need to go into the office. But in general, I think, and again, I have kids, but they're not in school, so that part hasn't impacted me. But I think it's been nice to see the community kind of pulling together to support each other. And the trails have been really busy, so finding trails that aren't busy has been tough, but I'm really happy to see people are getting outside. I think that nature nurtures, and I think people should go outside in a responsible way and get fresh air and take care of themselves mentally and physically. It's really taxing to sit in front of a computer all day and not move around. So I think that's really important to find that balance. And it's been nice to see that going on. And just people being creative and trying to make themselves the most relevant they possibly can. Like, okay, well, this part of our business isn't relevant right now. What else can we do? Okay, we're going to make masks, or we're going to, whatever. We're not doing this, but we've talked about it. Like, we're going to be a drive-through zoo, or just finding ways to be innovative on the fly has been really interesting to watch down here. And it seems like people are working really hard to do that. So that's what's up down here. But people are mostly following the rules.
Yeah. Before we go to Rob and Sarah for this question, I want to ask for the audience, what part of the state are you dialing in from today? You should have a poll appear on your screen if you're using Zoom. Click that and we'll see the results shortly. Rob, what's going on up north?
Well, you wouldn't know that we were in a pandemic for the number of people that are outside on the trails
Really?
and in the parks here in Boulder. They're as busy as usual. Boulder has quite a lot of outdoor folks, and the parks and trails are absolutely packed. Construction seems, at least the projects that were under construction, when this occurred are still going strong. You can drive around Boulder, down at the Transit Village, you can see that those projects are in full force. Some of the smaller firms that I've talked to and the sole practitioners, which we have quite a lot of in Boulder, have started to see kind of owner projects, residential projects on hold, and some of the more high-end residential projects seem to still be in the works. But I think it's a big mixture. It's kind of hard to describe one way or another what's happening. It's moving so quickly, but I think that folks are starting to pay attention and realize that there may be a slowdown headed their way, regardless of the typology that they're focused on. So I think it's pretty similar to Denver and down south.
I'll chime in here. We're in a little different situation in Aspen. Pickens County, as you guys know, was really the first hotspot along with Eagle County in the state. And so, Polis did a great job, actually did a huge favor to us by closing the mountains on the 15th of March. And that, while it was detrimental to tourism economy, was really important to our spread. We have 4 respirators in our hospital. That's it. And so we really have been working hard as a community to stay well. And I know that there's been a couple people that have been flown to Denver, but that has been paramount because we are such a small, isolated community, to the point where all construction stopped on April 1st and is not going to be right now through April 30th. So that has a very detrimental effect on our economy, on us as architects. And it's challenging. So we're leaning in really hard to be working with our politicians on recovery, how we can be educating them on what we're seeing in other parts of the state that are still maintaining safe job sites, and really trying to help guide them. But right now there's obviously health is the #1 concern. So that is driving a lot of decisions, as it should. So that is really what we're seeing, along with the things that you guys have already acknowledged, that most people are staying at home. Our firm, we've been at home since the 13th of March. We already were very much set up. Probably 70% of our firm is on laptops. Everyone got multiple monitors set up at home. So we're 55% women. A lot of people are co-parenting and having to balance already. So we felt in a very good position on that. But yeah, we have some real health concerns in our small rural mountain community up here that's really, really impacting our business.
Yeah, and that's, I want to jump ahead a little bit from where we were planning to go and talk about how that business impact is playing out locally. Are you seeing firms make some contingency plans, or other than the federal stimulus, are you hearing anything else out there?
Yeah, I can jump in. I mean, we obviously had to make some modifications to survive and to sustain this. So we had to do some temporary layoffs, extended health insurance during that period. We had to do salary reductions, and we really had to get ahead of this. That way we can keep, hopefully, the team longer and sustain this. We've been incredibly transparent with the team, with the numbers and what we're facing and the why. And obviously people have varying degrees of business understanding, but we've been trying to explain it in a way that it's digestible and understandable. So that way, they understand. And then, what I think is really powerful, having gone through 2 cycles myself, I remember, and I've said this to my team after 9/11, I was working for somebody, and I just remember, sitting down with him and saying, what can I do? Please, what can I do? And he was just lost, right? So we're just really trying to have clarity. We're trying to, as much as possible, cut through and really focus on what we do know and what we can do. And then also engage with our team on that. Okay, here's how you can grab some ad service on already existing contracts? What are things that we haven't been doing yet that we could be doing? Is there a whole visualization package that, gosh, we know that this client, it's understanding value with clients, right? And really listening. And I think that that is the number one thing that I am super focused on right now with myself as a professional and with our teams. And then if you really understand that value add to a client, you can appeal to them and you can talk to them and go, hey, I've been thinking about this. This is something we haven't done yet, but gosh, we can really provide this VR service for you. You've been struggling with understanding these spaces for hey, for $5,000, let's do this or whatever. And so it's bite-sized pieces, but you know, I think including your team on that and getting them engaged in that conversation, everyone has great strategic ideas.
Yeah, I think that's the key right now is figuring out what are one of the innovations that are going to come out of this. You know, necessity is the mother of invention, and you can list a whole bunch of different quotes that would apply to this situation, but people are anxious. This isn't something that just is going to hit one sector or one part of your studio. It's, you know, right now healthcare is really active, but it's probably, with you having a studio in 2 locations, hospitality was probably right out the gate, shut down. But maybe the other ones were still going strong in Denver. So I think as firms navigate through this, they're going to have to look for ways to make sure their talent is fully engaged and be creative. And it's hard to be creative when you're anxious. We're not fully actualized selves if we don't know where our next paycheck's going to come from. So having the principals come up with a plan and communicate what that plan is, not making promises because it is so fluid and unpredictable.
Well, the stimulus to the economy have done have created a couple of effects. You look at the market today, and we're back to where we were about a month ago, which is when we thought the market was hitting the bottom. So that is separate from the stimulus that the government has put into infrastructure and what they are trying to now do to smaller businesses and so on. So there is a dichotomy. There's some kind of a craziness, if you want, in that the market is doing one thing, but our clients, and I am a client in a way, because we continue to build the fast track systems and other stuff. So there are some disconnects between what is happening in the market, in the New York Stock Exchange or stock exchanges in the world, and what is happening on the street. The economy is not just that. The economy is everybody working, and the number of jobs that we have lost have created a great impact. So what is the change? Well, for one, the face-to-face meeting has changed already. We are now meeting this way. And what effect is that going to have in the future? Who knows? What effect is that going to have on the built environment, and how, as an urban designer, you know, to me, the greatest thing that I am here to observe is how are we going to, well, let me put it this way. My son lives in New York City, and New York City has been hit really hard. Thank goodness he is in good health and so on. But the challenge of density for us who are proponents of density is really density the thing that is going to save us? Because when recovery time comes, I think that we're going to see the benefits of density and having a closer and tighter community. So we're still observing.
Well, and another, you know, not only density, but when it's probably not the best idea to take mass transit right now, that's something that is against some of our better judgment in a sense. Hopefully it's a temporary situation, but as somebody who works for a transit agency, you've got to be wondering how this affects our planning in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, take the RTD right now that is free. I actually think that transit should be free in any location. And the city of Los Angeles was moving, and I think they're still moving toward 2028 when they were planning to host the Olympics, to have transit-free by that time. But yeah, so the question is how clean and what is the transmissibility of any disease in a packed and dense transit system?
There's going to be new models of what resilience means, a new definition of how that looks for us. This is going to change a lot of things, not just our planning infrastructure and some of the public client work that we do, but also what it means to have a resilient business. And I know, Rob, you've done some things to, which would be considered somewhat experimental business models, like a low overhead approach that we may all be wanting to learn more about in the near future.
Well, although I'd have to say that this particular economic recession, if that's what we're headed into, is unlike any of the previous ones. So, you know, we've tried to have a pretty diverse funding source for the projects. A lot of the projects that we work on are federally funded through HUD or USD Rural Development, or sources of funding that are fairly secure or recession proof. But if you aren't able to be on site, you really can't access the funding, so the project stops. So it doesn't really matter for us right now that the funding is secure and will still be there in a year if we can't access it. So we've really internally done some strategic planning to see how we could adapt in this situation and, you know, and survive. So that we are able to pick up when our clients are ready to go. And I can't say that we have any of the answers. I think that what we're trying to do is talk to as many people as possible and share information and really try to see, you know, what everyone's unique situation is, to try to get a collective knowledge, because I think we're all so different. It's affecting us in different ways, but there's some similarities and some ways that we can become more resilient as a business. One thing that's really clear, we move really quickly. We don't really have enough time to stop and plan internally. We're always either behind the deadline or trying to get the next project. And I don't know that we've been good at planning for something like this. It's really kind of a disaster plan, or the continuity planning that folks have been talking about. And we haven't necessarily been any better at it. We do have low overhead and we are used to working remotely, but that's hurt us because for us, remotely is on site. So we tend to be in the community in fairly remote locations. And so we've got technology like the Sprinter van office and the internet and everything that allows us to work on site, but that's just overhead right now and it's not really helping us.
Yeah. Sheva, I want to hear from the client point of view too, because you know, especially from a cultural institution that relies on face-to-face interaction and experiences that are in person. How do you see that changing, and what would you want to hear from a consultant right now that would be helpful?
I was thinking about this question last night, and so firstly, like I said before, we're trying to find ways that we can stay relevant in the community. So it's been really hard not to have our community here, because obviously that's how we make our money. Kind of to touch on what Rob was saying, though, the zoo has worked really hard and gets a bad rap. You know, having worked with them from the other side of the fence, they are like diligent about policing their budget, and they're always pressing to get the, you know, I don't want to say the cheapest, but they're just like, that's one of their number one goals, is to like run a really tight ship. And having run such a tight ship, they're now in a really good financial position in all of this. So they didn't have to lay anyone off yet, and they haven't yet. They can still pay everyone. They actually gave people their bonuses early, so that people felt a little less anxious about things. But in terms of, because they're in such a really good position, they want to use this time right now to build and remodel and dream as much as possible. And business loans are really cheap. So they're looking to, you know, which so is good news for you guys, that, and I don't know if everyone else is in the same good financial boat, but because we don't have visitors, we're like, oh, great, we have time to do all these things that visitors are normally in our way for. So that part has been a blessing in disguise, but you can only do so much animal experience virtually, right? The whole point is to get people outside and to have them come see these things face to face. So, we've been looking at VR stuff or drive through, or, how do we stay relevant to our community and how do we continue to engage them? And in terms of like what I would want to hear from a consultant, I don't know. The part that I think that is kind of crappy right now is that from what I've seen and from my position, but also kind of what I've seen in the industry, is that owners aren't adjusting their deadlines or their timeline. They're either putting it on hold or they still want it tomorrow when you originally were supposed to deliver it. And
if not faster, because there are people to work around now.
Yeah, exactly. And what I'm trying to explain is like, even though firms and consultants are saying, hey, it's business as usual, we're working from home, like we all know it's not business as usual. It's not. And so we need to stop pretending that, and how we get, and it's not like owners don't understand that. We're all in the same boat. But for some reason, they're just like, well, you're still getting 40 hours of work done in a week. Like, well, yeah, but also I have 2 kids climbing on my head, and like, I'm trying to balance my husband needing to get 40 hours of work, and so it's not business as usual. And so managing those expectations is tough. So I think honestly, from a consultant right now, I just want them to be honest about how productive they can be and they are being, and what the timeline realistically needs to look like. Like, I don't want it to be sugar-coated. All owners aren't going to be like this, but I'm more than happy to work with you because you're a person. We're all just people. Like, it's not just business, like it's personal. And so I think we need to stop removing some of the human aspect to this, because I think that's hurting us. And I don't know. And I think in the past, we've now speaking like, if I'm still on the firm or the consultant side, we've been afraid to not deliver on time, or not, whatever it is that we promised, we want to do it as promised and when we promised it. And I think we just need to give each other a little more grace and not be so afraid about being transparent about where we're at with things. Like, hey, look, it's going to take 3 more weeks. I'm sorry. It just is what it is. And I don't know, maybe that's just me, but that's kind of how I'm thinking about things. Even though I'm from the standpoint of like, my company now wants to build everything and do things faster, and like, we got to get all this stuff done while people aren't here. It's sort of a double-edged sword a little bit. So I don't know. I'm not even sure that I answered your question. I just kind of.
No, Sheva, I'm seeing that a lot. Obviously, we have shut down construction sites. So we have heavy impact going on, right? And what I'm seeing is almost a paralysis with what to do with that. And what I have been guiding specifically, obviously our team, we're heavy communicators. We do weekly updates. So I think we're doing well there, and we try to be very transparent and communicate expectations, right, the best we can. But with our contractors, just again, start that open dialogue. I have found that so many of them are scared that they're going to be held to something that they have no control of. And I think there is a lot of grace in the world right now. I think we are all dealing with unprecedented times, but without at least something out there, it feels so ungrounded. And so as much as we can lay a little foundation just to even have a dialogue about, I have found that to be really settling, at least for me personally, across the board. So it really goes to, being true to expectations, number one, and then getting it out there for that conversation, and then, being strategic about it.
Yeah.
There's really two kinds of conversations that are happening, it seems to me, that are critical right now. One is the conversations internally, amongst your colleagues, and I'll be curious to know if you found some really good tools or tips or techniques to continue that collaboration in the virtual world for people who are now all remote. The other is external, is just realizing that there's a lot of challenge happening not just in the firms, but in the people that we serve as well. And hopefully when grace is needed, it'll be extended. And they, by opening up that conversation, you might give them the freedom to also ask for some forgiveness on their part as well.
Yep.
So that leads me to that question of how is that collaboration continuing in firms? I don't necessarily want to say, well, we downloaded this product or we had this app, but more about taking people who are used to the world of physical presence, face-to-face, swiveling around in their chair and asking a question to someone, or going onto a job site and being able to put eyes on a situation to the situation we have now.
If I may respond that, because over the past few days, I had a really interesting case. Without going into much detail, I had to review some product that we were receiving from a contractor. And because of my fever last week, I could not go out on the site. I was literally quarantined. So some of our team members went to inspect the product with FaceTime, basically kind of technology. And then they took photographs and video and so on. And unfortunately, the product was defective. So I had to produce a notice of no compliance based on a virtual visit, which was a little bit of a challenge. So that is just one example, but I think it's kind of showing that I would have arrived to the same conclusion had I been there in person.
And I think for us, we've tried to keep a structure. We've always been flexible in terms of being able to work remotely or work from home or work kind of an alternative schedule. So we've had more of a kind of a deliverable based expectation and not like a time clock in our firm. But I think that the structure is really important, especially in chaotic times. And so I know we felt pretty ungrounded and disjointed the first several weeks. And I think now we've kind of gone back to this idea that the team has to connect every day during the week, and we've been doing that through Ring Central is the software that we use for our phone system, and I know it's powered by Zoom, so it's probably the equivalent of Zoom. And we do that every day, and we try to make it a fun experience, and we've been using the messaging system through that as well to kind of keep things going. It's not going to replace, you know, in-person meetings or communication for us in terms of, you know, what we do long term, but I think that it's definitely something that we're going to adapt for the short term, and hopefully it's a few months or less, but if it does extend further, I think we'll have to start delivering some of our projects virtually. Some of the planning work that we've done in the past, we've started to adapt curriculum for strategic planning so that we're able to work with communities remotely and continue delivering content, kind of probably similar to what AIA has been doing so well really over the last 2 weeks. So that's been our focus.
Ignacio, another client question, I guess. What are you pushing out to your vendor community? Are you contingency planning for, I mean, obviously you go to a free ride system and the fare box revenue goes to zero, and other public entities are of course going to face declining tax income. So what does the future look like?
Yes, actually, 2 weeks ago, the RTD board basically said that all projects that were not funded would be put on hold for the meantime. So that is kind of a blanket statement, because some projects are maybe partially funded and we are in the process of getting more funding and so on. And then you are right. Revenue from fare boxes for RTD is less than 30%. And that's what I was saying, that we should be looking for better ways to not rely on fare boxes. Luxembourg became the first country in the world to pass earlier this year all free transit from border to border. That is kind of a pipe dream. But yeah, so at this point we were having already problems with ridership. With the low cost of gasoline, we have less ridership. And so we were already being impacted by that, which is incredible because the region had been growing kind of at a good rhythm, but the ridership was staying pretty much flat and even declining in some places. So we had already a plan to reduce service in certain areas. That has now been accelerated a little bit through COVID. And once we resume to the new normal, then obviously our modelers and planners will have a new challenge on how people are moving together. Today, with gas at less than $1 per gallon, as I hear, you know, the incentive of going by transit, especially because of the social proximity, that's actually not going to help public transit, at least in the short run.
Yeah. And we're hearing from the legislature, of course, they can't meet in person right now either because of all this. And their schedule keeps getting pushed back, but they've got a fiscal year budget to pass and get into place because there's a lot of individuals and organizations that rely on that funding, including schools and transit agencies and you name it. The word we're hearing is no new money. In fact, we know we're not going to get additional income. We're going to have to worry about how to model the declining income without everybody filing unemployment insurance and not paying income tax. So it's going to be certainly in the short term, some pain for public entities, which will have a downstream consequence for people that do that work. As you indicated, Ignacio, saying, you know, putting projects on hold. So it's going to be a interesting few months before we get out of the woods on this thing. Rather than dwell on that, I want to kind of shift to look on toward the future and maybe some positive aspects of it. How do you all, you've had a variety of career paths and trajectories so far. And some of you, you've seen stuff like this come and go. There've been downturns before. Some of it might be something new or you haven't experienced in this part of your job category. But how do you see the architecture profession changing once we get past this? I'll start with, let's start with Sarah, because I know you've been thinking about how your firm is going to change, even when, you know, you were still cranking out projects and had a full load of deadlines and deliverables.
Well, I think a really positive from this is the ability for people to work remotely in our field. And I think over the years, there has been a fear of that. And so I am really hopeful that that's going to be a really positive outcome from what we're seeing right now. And so I think that hopefully is going to keep more diversity in our profession, certainly more women, which is a huge goal of Colorado AIA. So that is something that I'm really encouraged by, and I hope that business owners really look at what's working right now and start implementing those as policies within their firms. It's interesting right now, we're actually actively pursuing getting a new house project in the middle of this, where we can't meet the clients, they're out of state. And it's been really cool to be interviewing for a job, right? And so a couple years ago, and I'm sharing this, we had a client, it was actually our client that we did Matsuhisa for in Denver. And he's like, well, what is your process? Like, how do you even design, right? And we were like, oh my God, we suck at showing this, right? We got to like really show people what we do. So we've started putting together process portfolios. And so that is how we just interviewed for this job. We walked them through a couple processes of how the basically how it goes. And so I would just really encourage you guys to be thinking about how you demonstrate your value, what you do, your iterative process, how you do that virtually, right? And how you explain that, and not get stuck, well, okay, until we meet in person, we can't be moving forward, because there's so much that we can do. The other thing that we're just really being bullish about is our marketing and SEO and positioning and markets, and you know, just how do we like relevant, and how do we really utilize this as a time to be getting into different markets. And so now is not a time to be backing down on your marketing and your business development. So really fine tuning that, and really, you know, we're pulling in people who aren't billable right now. We're like, you're working on Pinterest, like you're doing, you know, and so, and being really organized about that. We have a very organized marketing spreadsheet where we understand by phase what we're trying to do. And again, then I think by engaging the team with that, they really feel part of the solution. But I guess mentally what I'm thinking about is, I'm thinking, okay, let's say we're at home for 6 months, right? Like, I hope we're not, but let's just say we got to keep doing business. So how do we do that? And how do we do it in a simple way that really illustrates how we can be functioning, and how we can be designing with people remotely? And quite frankly, most people want to be doing stuff, right? They're motivated to be doing stuff. And so it's tapping into that and leaning in on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know it's not at all the same service for sure, but the restaurant industry has some parallels, right? Because they have a customer base, and they have a workforce base. And when the revenue is not coming in, when they're told, you know, you can't use your dining room, they've got to keep their customers. And so they pivot to the, you know, the carry out and the delivery and all this. And unfortunately, the workforce has to shrink, which is terrible. And hopefully there's a plan for that at the federal level to help backstop that a little bit. But the ultimate goal is to have something for those employees to come back to when it's over, have something for those customers to come back to when it's over. I think it sounds dire and also almost Darwinistic, but that's exactly the model that everybody needs to be thinking about. Is no matter how long this lasts, you've got to have a place for your employees to be able to thrive and for your clients to get good service out of. And if it requires some short-term contingency plans for now, in order to be there for the long term, then people are going to have to make some hard choices, unfortunately. All this to say, I hope it's not true, and this is a quick blip, and we come back swinging as soon as possible. But Rob, what about some of the things that you think might come out of the other side of this?
Well, I mean, I completely agree with Sarah. I think that a positive aspect would be a healthier work environment in architecture in general. I think that we easily fall out of balance with life because of the demands of the profession and the projects. I know personally, sometimes if I'm caught up in a project, I'm just mono-focused. I'm just singularly focused on one thing, and I'm neglecting lots of other things. So I think finding that balance. And then I think being more resilient as a profession, because we can't be victims. We have to be proactive. We have to exist tomorrow. So we really can't disappear. And I don't really believe that we're 1 or 2 recessions away from being irrelevant. I think that we can figure this out and be part of the solution. And I think that leadership becomes really important during these times. So, you know, the interactions that I've had with AIA, and just listening to Sarah talk about her firm and what she's doing gives me hope, because I can see that there are leaders that are really taking care of their firms, their employees, and their regions, and I'd like to take inspiration there.
Sheva, you just recently made the transition from practice to the client side. What do you think is going to change?
I keep seeing this quote that I keep thinking, or I don't know if it's a quote, but it's like, the gist of it is like, you get to decide what you leave behind and what you take with you after we, get through this. And so I think, kind of just echoing what Sarah's saying, I think, taking time to really focus on what you're about and how you can streamline those things. And I think, we're doing it in a way different way here at the zoo, but everyone has to kind of do a bunch of different jobs and be flexible, and all of us are together being part of the solution. And for me, that's been really huge. So I love that Sarah said that, because I mean, I'm probably not going to get called in to feed the lions, but it's kind of like, you need to be ready to do any job here at any time. And that's not the right answer for an architecture firm per se, but leaning into your team's other skills and aptitudes and passions right now, and figuring out, we don't have this work for you to do, but, what do you want to do, or how can we use the skills that you have to better ourselves or streamline things. And I think this is such a great time to really look at, like, it's so easy to just get lost every day, and your day just runs you over, right? And you all of a sudden don't have control of it. So taking the time to take a breath right now and figure out, like, how do we want our days to look? How do we want this to look? And being more, what's the word I'm looking for? Sorry. I don't know, but more deliberate about the things that we do and why we do them, rather than like letting these projects run us over. And I don't know, but I think for me, the biggest part is letting your whole team be part of the solution. Or, I mean, as much of your team as you can keep on board. I understand some of that might need to change, but I think we literally all are in this together. And so leadership is huge, but knowing that, we're better together than we are individually. So the leaders aren't having to figure this out solely by themselves. Like, we all should collaborate within an office of how can we, can we use VR? Or how can we make ourselves more relevant? And how are we going to get on the other side? In terms of like the profession changing, I think after a while, it's going to kind of go back to quote unquote normal. Although I would hope we would be more streamlined and more deliberate and more realistic about timelines, and have this new appreciation for untapped skills that we didn't know our team had. And maybe we found some new skills, but I think that there'll be a lot of things. And I don't know, it sort of sounds negative. I don't really want us to like settle back into the way that we were, because I think we could be so much better and so much stronger coming out of this. But we have to stick with those changes that we worked really hard to make right now, and carry those forward and be deliberate about those things, so that if we're in a situation like this again, we have a process. I mean, it's not going to be this exact situation, but we have a process to, like, I don't know, so we don't feel so lost, I guess.
Yeah, that's the paradox, right? When times are quote unquote good for architecture firms, they're the most stressful for the individual employees and the least innovative, because you don't have any bandwidth to do that. And the work-life balance is, totally shot down. So
can I add to the answer?
Lining in this, it's that, okay, now we can reassess everything that we took for granted before. Now we can figure out how we want to, work purposefully. Ignacio.
Yeah, well, actually, before you even ask something else, I want to add a little bit to this answer, because I agree with Sarah that one of the equity pieces that is going to benefit on the profession is that women, especially childbearing women, will have, we have learned that they will have better access to getting into the productive activity of architects. But this also has shown very deep cracks in our society. And we have seen that minorities, especially African Americans in our communities, are at a great disadvantage. So as we continue to develop the profession, as we continue to educate people, those people with less access to the resources are going to probably be more challenged to getting to that level. And then to add something to a question that Brad Siegel was asking, in a previous career, my job was to run design charrettes all over the country. So how is that going to look like is going to be a really good challenge. In my work at RTD, I also need a lot of community input on a face-to-face basis. So how is that going to change answers that we still don't have? And on the Denver Architecture Foundation, with the box city where we had kids coming and creating all these wonderful cities, that is going to change as well. I think that some people in the AIA EDI group are already engaged with the Denver Architecture Foundation to figure out, is there a way to do it in a virtual way and so on. Thank you.
Hopefully, you know, this becomes a great equalizer in the sense that it should really magnify the empathy that people feel. So if you have any provider in your household, whether it be someone who is, you know, nursing a newborn and who would normally be required to just say, sorry, boss, you got to work without me for the next X number of weeks, or someone who's a young person trying to go through school, but also has to work a job to help their parents. Everybody's in the same boat together, from the highest ranked firm principal to the person who, you know, is the lowest ranked draftsman. So maybe this will make the access to the practice of architecture a little less bumpy and a few less pinch points along the way, to where we all understand what people are going through.
Really quickly, I am proud of my intern program. I have had normally architecture graduate students for the past 9 years. And my current intern is now in San Diego. We're still working on a daily basis. And so that is working. There was a question before about technology and so on. We have had some challenges. And actually, I just found out that in order to get your computer back to speed, at least in my case, that computer that I need to remote to, I need to go to the office and reboot the computer there. So there's a challenge there. I don't know if that contributes something to that question, but I wanted to add that point.
Well, one more challenge to consider before we go and end on a positive note is some of the rendering software is so good, and the ability to work remotely is providing a whole different, you know, dynamic, that there might be a client expectation that, well, I love the rendering, just get me the permit. And when everything's remote and you don't have that face-to-face interaction, they're not paying for your presence, your physical time. Is it gonna, you know, the upside might be empathy, the downside might be commodification. How do we push back against that?
I hear what you're saying, but I sort of disagree in a way. I think that people just really, like, what's coming out of this is people are realizing how important that face-to-face contact is, and I don't know, maybe this is me being too optimistic. I think they're realizing that they've maybe taken it for granted a little bit in the past, and there's just so much more that happens in a face-to-face interaction. The body language, the, you know, being able to sit down and look at, it's just kind of like, the best example I have is, like, we have all this digital technology, and some of us, even young people, like, still need to print things out just to read them. Like, we just can't read it on the screen. So, and again, maybe I'm just being optimistic, but I feel like it won't turn into a commodification, because people want to talk it, like, literally physically talk it out and have that face-to-face. But I don't know, when you hear about things like they're like 3D printing houses and stuff, then you're like, well, I don't know, maybe we are being commodified. So I don't know, but I think that people, it's just like a human desire to have that physical contact and communication with each other.
Mike, I don't think that has changed. I have been approached many times by, especially when I was in private practice, by clients saying, hey, can you do a quick doodle? And, you know, so I think that many clients still have that idea that what we do is just a quick doodle that you can just build the next day.
Yeah. Well, no matter how good the software gets, there is nothing that's going to change the fact that architecture is a way of seeing the world, synthesizing the needs, and producing a solution that's tailored to that individual client. There just isn't a way to do that in software yet. Maybe we'll get there someday, but whether we're working remotely or still working in our offices and being on job sites, that doesn't change. That's still the value add that the profession brings. And that is reason to have hope for the future, no matter where we provide, what seat we're sitting in to provide those services or how that conversation takes place. Before we log off, I want to thank everybody for your contributions today. I hope you are optimistic too, wherever you're participating from, that we will get through this together as an organization. These are your representatives on the board of directors. So wherever you are in the state, please stay in touch with them. Let them know how you're doing, what help you can find of great value from this organization. And any closing thoughts from our panel today?
Let me start, since I just put an email there. My email is there. You can reach me there anytime, especially those in the Denver region. I'm here to help and stay the course. I think that social separation is, which actually should be a physical distance, is really what we're observing, should be observed. And, I hope that with those minimal measures, we can actually come on the other side. I trust on the good judgment of everybody. So good luck to all.
Rob, any last thought?
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing Sarah's process material so that we can basically learn how she keeps it all going.
Mm-hmm.
I actually was sent something by my 81-year-old mother on Friday night, and it said, good organizations and people survive in time of crises. Great organizations and people are improved by them. And that was just super inspiring for me. So I want to end on that. And I think we all have our work cut out for us, but in a really positive, great way. We're all going to emerge as better practitioners, better designers, better leaders. So the challenge is on.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great note to end with. I want to, for the last bit of housekeeping, say, if you have any questions or follow-ups on your learning units, you can contact Megan at aiacolorado.org, M-E-G-A-N. If you have ideas about future virtual connects, please share those also with Megan, or we have a page on our website where you can apply to be a presenter. And we will hopefully see you in the virtual world next Wednesday at the same time. Take care. Have a great week.